Hello, everyone. How are you? I hope everybody had a great Christmas. I hope everybody, spent time with family, spent time with friends. I hope everybody's full. But listen, we have just seen an absolute uptick in attacks on Christmas Day, whether that's the attacks in Ukraine, the attacks in the United Kingdom. It's just been absolutely wild. We've also had reports of attacks in Syria, and things are happening, like I said, there would with these, these fractured parts. So let's just get straight into it, guys. But don't forget, give me a little Christmas present and hit those buttons down below, the subscribe, the like, and the bell button. And of course, if you guys want to share my stuff on social media, please feel free. So let's just get into this, guys, and we'll go straight to the share map of Ukraine. And I really want to focus on what's been happening in and around that town. In fact, is it a town? In and around, the city of Pokrovsk. Now, Pokrovsk itself is, this is it here. This is a key location because of the north and south railroads and the north and south main supply routes. So let me just zoom in a little bit. So you've got a train track here that comes in from the south, and you've also got a train track here that comes in from the north. It's a logistics hub because you've got two main supply routes north and the main supply route south. Now, these main supply routes are critical in Ukraine because the ground is very difficult to, I say very difficult, the ground's difficult to get through because it's wide open fields, and these wide open fields, they have really rich soil, and that rich soil is very difficult for vehicles to move over. So a lot of the movements in Ukraine has been on road. Yes, of course, the Russians have some limited capacity to go off road, but they don't have any capacity to move logistics off road. All their heavy logistics has to be on road. What we've seen recently is the Russians using light unarmored vehicles, so stripped down 4x4s and off-road buggies to circumvent Ukrainian forward positions and attack from, potentially the flanks or the rear. Right, listen, guys, I'm going to concentrate on Pokrovsk. This was this time a month and 2 days ago. What I'm going to do again, I've got a lot to get through, so I'm going to try and push this video quite quick. Just consider the front line of Pokrovsk is their front line. So this is how much ground the Russians have taken in the last month or so. Each click is a day. So just tell me, in your opinion, do you think the Ukrainians are holding that front line? I would suspect there is no front line there. Right, so just look how quickly these guys are taking Pokrovsk. I don't know how further these guys can get west before the evacuation of Pokrovsk is called. What I would say is the Russians will keep this road open. What's this road called? Is there a name on it? No, I can't find it. So this road here that runs east-west, this road will stay open so the Ukrainians can evacuate, because the Russians do not want, a last stand scenario in Pokrovsk. That's going to be a nightmare for the Russians. It's going to take a lot of resources. What the Russians would rather these guys do is evacuate and just run off. I would suspect that there are already plans in place to do that. And if that's not being activated now, I think it's going to be activated very soon. So this comes as the Russians launched a huge attack on Christmas Day on the Ukrainian power grid. Remember, power grids now are a legitimate military target. It's a legitimate strike point. Vladimir Zelensky's come out and he's condemned this attack. He's saying it's inhumane. Well, I'm definitely Team Ukraine and I'm Team GB. But equally, there's a war. All attacks essentially are inhumane. These attacks will be brought out, when they can, these attacks will happen when they can cause the most destruction, the most devastation. On Christmas Day in Ukraine, I know a lot of Ukrainians are now celebrating Christmas Day on the 25th of December, not the 7th of January. So these attacks are expected at best. Now, let me just share this to show you guys what I'm talking about with these constant attacks on the energy grid. And then we'll come on to the United Kingdom, what's been happening in the United Kingdom, the attacks in the UK, and then we're going to talk about Syria quickly. So Ukraine's energy minister, German, I'm going to assume that's how you pronounce it, German Glushenko, said Russia is massively attacking the power sector, and that the transmission system operator had already imposed restrictions on electricity supply to minimize the impact. So Ukraine's largest private energy sector, DTEK, whose equipment was severely damaged in the attack, said that it was the 13th massive attack, largest attack on the Ukrainian power energy sector, and the 10th massive attack on the company's energy facilities. So what we can see there is this concerted effort to take out the power, because once you take out the power, you take out the utilities, you take out the industry, you take out pretty much everything, because guess what? Everything runs on electricity at some point, and you can keep following that back and say everything runs on diesel or hydrocarbons, because I would say very strongly that renewables is just not even an option in Ukraine right now. So that's kind of that is the situation in Ukraine. Now, I got a message from my friend. He gave me an update of the situation on the ground. So I'll just read you this, guys, as he put it. More talks about domestic cruise missiles that are to be produced in 2025. So for those of you who don't know, the Ukrainians are looking like they're going to start producing their own cruise missiles, early 2025. He's saying it feels like Germany in 1944, 1945, when there's always some talk about some wonder weapon, some sort of super weapon that can, change the balance of this conflict. Every day the Ukrainians have to come up with a new wonder weapon idea, whether it's the F-16s, the Challenger tanks, or the ATACMS, or now the new cruise missiles. So what you can see, the tone in Ukraine seems to be, and of course it's going to be that way. Just remember what I've just showed you from the front line, each day collapsing. In fact, it's not even collapsing anymore. The front line's gone. The Russians' onslaught is daily. So you can see the desperation now from the Ukrainians. They're talking about wonder weapons. They're talking about some new system that's going to change the landscape on the battlefield. The only thing that's going to change the landscape is NATO boots on the ground. Experts are discussing Orban's remarks, saying one side, Ukraine, won't survive through 2025. And, you could already argue that Ukraine as a country is over. I mean, 43,000, the human toll, as official figures are, that there's 43,000, they've transcended into beams of light. Now, just consider 43,000, what that demographic makeup would be of. It would be a predominantly young fighting age men. Now, those young fighting age men are also young repopulated men. So the demographics of Ukraine has changed. Like, where's Ukraine going to go in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years as a country? Because the birth rate, I would say, is absolutely plummeted. Yeah, so one side of this argument saying that Ukraine will be able to last over a year, and then you've got Orban's remarks saying that Ukraine won't last through 2024, and then he's saying there's just more talks about these, surely more talks about counteroffensive and getting back the territories. It really does seem like from the Ukrainian side now, things are getting really desperate, and the more things get desperate in Ukraine, the closer we are in the United Kingdom for boots on the ground. Remember, we are committed now. It doesn't matter what we say. It doesn't matter what Starmer says. It doesn't matter what David Lammy says when he turns up with his Velcro trainers on. Doesn't matter anymore. The United Kingdom are committed in this conflict. There isn't any other way around it. Whether we agree with that, whether we don't agree with that, whether we think we should have given more assistance early on and to avert what would happen now. And let me be quite clear. Early on, I was quite openly saying, that if we send troops now, the human toll, the human resources toll, shall we say, is going to be a lot less than if we let the Russians push day by day, because the Ukrainians never really had the capacity to hold these guys off. The whole Russian economy is built for this purpose. It's to fight a long conflict of attrition. The Ukrainians isn't. The Ukrainians weren't ready. The Ukrainians have been trained by NATO. NATO isn't ready to fight a long attritional war. NATO's whole structure is to fight quick, light infantry, strike season grasp conflicts where they use small teams, special forces, go in, take out the headshed, pull out, move, and then move their infantry in. They're not ready. NATO is, and again, it's not just me saying it, it's the NATO Secretary General who's saying this. NATO are really not ready. We need to pull our big boy socks up and take the bull by the horns because the inevitable is coming. So, let's go on to the United Kingdom now. So obviously from Ukraine, there was the attacks in, Ukraine on Christmas Day. There was also attacks in the United Kingdom on Christmas Day. Now, not much really has come out about this. And it's kind of like we just accept what it is now. We just accept the likely, there's obviously, I can't speculate, but you guys can speculate all you want. But let me just share the article with you. So man arrested for this thing. Let me hang on. So you can read that yourselves, guys. Okay. After a car, look how polite they put it. After a car drives into a group on London pavement, like, what do we think this is? Like, what do we think this type of incident, we'll call it an incident, what do we think happened here, guys? What kind of person do we think it was? So Metropolitan Police have been involved in an altercation at a nightclub prior to getting in his car and mounting the pavement. So, like, this sort of stuff never happened. Like, in the 90s, when I grew up, even in the noughties, like, this sort of stuff never happened. So what do we think's happened to the United Kingdom where these sort of things just become more and more, frequent, and we just, oh yeah, it's another guy mounted the, like, these sort of things are happening more and more. And like, for me, I try to conceptualize what is going through someone's head. Like, what's going through someone's head when they think that is a good idea? Like, do they think they're not going to be caught? Do they think they're not going to be, like, arrested? And, it just absolutely fascinates me. Like, I think fascinate's the wrong word, actually. Right, let's put yourselves in the scenario. You're in a nightclub. You're having a good time or whatever. You're dancing, big box, little box, shaking the fish. And something happens and you're that angry. It's been that bad. Whatever's happened to you has been that bad, and that you've been dishonored that much. You feel like you have to go and get your car and do something. It's just absolutely, absolutely insane what's happening. And the thing is, these things are happening more and more now all over the Western world. And I wonder why. Like, why is this? I've got a tickly nose. What is happening to the United Kingdom? What's happening to the Western world where we see these things where people drive their cars and use them as a two-ton ram, for example? It's absolutely insane. And unfortunately, we've literally got more of this to come. We really have. We've got more of this sort of stuff to come, because I really don't feel this is the end of it at all. Also, there was a let me just show you these articles again. So I don't, hang on. Another altercation here, guys. Police, hang on. Again, more on Christmas Eve. So what is it about people on Christmas Eve? Was there something in the air? Was there something in the water? Did people not get the right Christmas Eve boxes? So this was another incident. Ambulance service called armed officers to an address in Redditch over concerns that safety of a man with one of these things. So again, the same thing, and none of these men's names have been released. So, I have no idea why, but, these guys' names have not been released yet. Although I'm sure they will be released at some point, but who knows? So what we know is there's been a man with one of these things, probably swinging it around in an aggressive manner. And then armed police came in and closed down the incident. Like I said previously, these things never used to happen. So what is it that's been an uptick in these attacks, this word here, these attacks, and using cars? Like, what is it? What's happened to our country in the last 10, 20 years that makes these things, more fashionable, I guess? Yeah, I think fashionable is the right word. When it just seems like, I'm angry, I'm going to pull one of these things out. Because, this is happening more and more. Anyway, right, guys, it's just absolutely insane. Unfortunately, we have more of this to I guess we have more of this to look forward to, unfortunately. Now, this comes out as well as Britain's economy is closer to be. An article was out, in fact, today, that Britain's economy to be closer to Guyana as Starmer's living standard pledge falls flat. Country's growth in GDP per head expected to become the weakest in the G7. Britain's economy will be closer to Guyana than the US on some measures in a decade's time as Keir Starmer fails to meaningfully boost living standards. Right, do you know, and I've said this from the longest time, how we lift living standards in the United Kingdom? We drop taxes. Because right now, there's no incentive for people to go out and work. Like, if you want to start a business right now in the United Kingdom, and you fail, there's no backup, there's no support for you. If you can manage to get, I don't know, 10, 20, 50, 100 grand together as working capital, and then say, right, I've got this money, I'm going to start a business selling, I don't know, buckets or whatever, the best buckets that they've ever been, the new buckets that are going to revolutionize the bucket industry. If your bucket's unsuccessful, you fail, you lose your money, that's on you. If your bucket company is successful, guess what? You are going to get taxed and taxed and taxed and taxed. And inflation is a tax. Inflation is going up. So the spending power of your pound is going down at the same time as Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are just gaslighting us, saying, we've got more money in your pockets. No, you haven't. You haven't given us more money in our pockets. What you've done is given us more currency in our pockets, but the spending power of that currency has gone down. So we've actually got less and less and less. And the analogy I always give is, I can remember like last year, 6 bags of spring onion crisps used to cost me £1. They're now £1.50. And we're being told that inflation's at, like, I don't know, something ridiculously lower than that. But that is literally, though that has gone up by 50%. There's no arguing that. That is real time economics. Last year, I wish I'd have, in fact, I might do it on New Year's Day, actually. Last year, I wish I'd have gone out and bought and done a video on it where I buy, I don't know, a bag of my favorite crisps, my favorite coffee, a loaf of bread and a loaf of milk, or just like some core essential items. And then this year I could have done the same. I might do that this year, and just for next year, just see how that inflation has gone up. Anyway, guys, so that's kind of what's happening in the United Kingdom. Nothing good. Less money in our pockets and more gaslighting from the government. Now, over to Syria, because if you remember when this thing happened, when this rebel takeover happened in Syria, what I said is, there are so many different groups in Syria. You've got the Kurds in the northeast, and those guys are going to be fighting with the Turks because the Turks don't like the Kurds on that, that close to their border. Also in that northeast region of Syria, you've got a lot of, that is the oil producing region. You've also got the those groups that start with T and end in ist that are operating kind of on the Iraq. In fact, let's just go. We'll read this article and then I'll go on to the map. And then you've got these. So you've got the ones that begin with that are predominantly prescribed as the groups beginning in T and end in ist. And those guys operate predominantly on the Iraq-Syria border, which is you would call that predominantly mid-Syria, mid-eastern Syria. You've then got the rebel forces who are now in control, or although we're told they're in control of Damascus. You've also got the Israeli forces pushing through from the southwest, and now you've got what I said as well is you've got the Syrian army, the Syrian army who is loyal to President Bashar al-Assad. Remember, President Bashar al-Assad is still the democratically elected leader of Syria. So from this article here, then, Assad loyalists, 14 in clash with Syria's new ruling forces. Now, it's key where this happened. Where are we? Yeah. Syria's new rebel-led authorities say supporters of ousted President Bashar al-Assad have 14 interior minister troops in an ambush in the west of the country. They say 10 other troops were wounded in fighting on Tuesday near the Mediterranean port of Tartus, a stronghold of Assad's minority Alawite Muslim sect. So let's just really quickly go on to the map so you guys can see the significance of that and why it's and why this is important, not just for the troops that are loyal to Bashar al-Assad, but also why this is important to the Russians and why I feel they're going to want to have that area of at least Tartus, that area potentially under Syrian Bashar al-Assad's control. And it's all to do with this seaport that gives Russia access to the Mediterranean. Ooh, not that one. Hang on. That one. And then here. So for context, you've got obviously Cyprus, and then you've got, if I let you go wider. So you've got Cyprus, Lebanon, down here you've got Israel, Jordan, Iraq. That's kind of the landscape. But here, the Mediterranean, this is the region that we're concentrating on, because this location of Tartus, this is where Russia had their, had their seaport, they had their, military, a lot of military, a lot of Russia's navy, used this port of Tartus. And of course, that gave Russia access to the Mediterranean. That's why this region is important. And if there's any region that the Russians are going to want to fund asymmetric warfare, guerrilla warfare, it's going to be this region of Tartus. So I feel in the future, there's going to be a lot more of those attacks coming in this region. And what they're going to do with those attacks, they're going to try and force the new Syrian government into some sort of agreement with Russia, whereby Russia can use this port and have some sort of, I don't know what it's going to be. But agreement whereby the Russians use that port and the Russians give the Syrians something. Doesn't really matter what, but I feel fighting will continue until that agreement is in place. So guys, that is kind of it in a nutshell, what's been happening around the world. Yes, I kept that relatively short. Just be under no illusion, okay? These conflicts are not going anywhere. They're escalating on a daily basis. Christmas Day, we had attacks all over the place. We had attacks in the United Kingdom. Now, of course, these are never going to be related to that thing that begins with T and ends in ist, because the government, the police, they're not going to want to release that information. But it's a certain demographic that is predominantly causing these these attacks. Using cars as in this context, it's become very fashionable with a certain group of people. Also, those things that are long, that are that they use, that are made of steel, using those things are very fashionable among a certain demographic of people. And unfortunately, this is this is, I guess, the new normal now in the United Kingdom. It wasn't the new normal when I was growing up, but unfortunately for our children, this is, the new normal that we have to live with. We also have to live with the fact that the Ukrainian front line has already collapsed. The Russians are, from the warm up that I showed you guys earlier, the Russians are just pushing on and on and on. And each kilometer, each meter that the Russians take in the east of Ukraine, that is moving closer to the United Kingdom. It's moving closer to NATO. But metaphorically, it's moving us closer to boots on the ground in Ukraine. The situation in Syria, that is just going to drag that whole region into a wider conflict, because the Russians, they still want to have that influence in the Mediterranean. President Bashar al-Assad's got his group of, I guess, are they the rebels now? I don't know. I don't even know how to how to label these guys. You've got so many different factions fighting over so many different things in Syria, and then you've got the Israelis obviously moving in from the south. So that whole situation, it's going to drag the Middle East into a wider conflict. And remember, like I said in all my videos, guys, okay, the United Kingdom will lead NATO, or what's left of NATO, in Ukraine by 2025. Now, I'm not just saying that because, I see these things happening now. Go back through my videos. I've been saying this in my personal life since 2022, but on public record, well over a year, I've been saying this, that exact phrase. Britain will lead NATO by 2025 in Ukraine, and the United States will have a conflict will invade Iran, and have a conflict in the Middle East. Again, the dates for Iran would be March 2026. The dates for the United... Now, the reason I can say that quite easily with the Iran is because of the logistics needed and the US election cycle. With the United Kingdom, with NATO, with Europe, with whatever's happening there, there's a lot more moving parts. So I have to say, you know, the only thing I can say is by 2025. Anyway, guys, that is it, I think. Guys, that's all I've got for you for today. I'm going to Max to Grin. I'll get you guys another video later.